Hey folks, welcome back to another Retrofit gaming video. Tonight's video project, we are working on upgrading our Sega Dreamcast and replacing the GD-ROM optical drive with a Terraonion MODE, ODE. Very similar to how we did our Sega Saturn Retrofit project, and I'll post a link to that video in the description of this one. We are using a 2TB Samsung 870 EVO SSD for our storage for the Dreamcast library. We're also going to be installing a 3D printed SD card reader from Laserbear Industries to be able to access and read and write files from the SD card, straight from where the GD-ROM unit used to be. And lastly, a little quality of life improvement here. Anybody who's used a Dreamcast knows how unbearably loud the fan is on these ones, the stock fan. So we're going to be replacing out the stock cooling fan with a Noctua 5-volt DC fan. Noctua is known for very silent cooling fans that push a lot of airflow through a PC, and so now we're going to be taking a model design for smaller applications and installing it in our Dreamcast. Alright folks, I'm pretty excited about this one. Let's get to it. Alright, real quick before we get into the fun stuff, just wanted to have a quick overview of our setup here. We have a North American Sega Dreamcast. This is a VA1 motherboard unit, and this is currently connected to an official Sega Dreamcast VGA box and outputting 480p for the most part up to our display. Unfortunately, my SCART cable, my 480p compatible SCART cable for the Dreamcast, didn't arrive. It actually got delayed until May, so we might be reviewing this video back in May, or rather in May, as we put the SCART cable through the Retrofitting to upscale this to 1080p. But as it is for now, we're going to be testing in 480p through the VGA box. To prepare for seeing the difference on the Noctua fan versus the stock fan, let's actually fire up a game, and with our decibel meter here, let's see what the stock fan produces. Just going to be using Soul Calibur here. Always a great game. And this console has actually been fitted with a mod chip several years before the whole Dreamcast boot CD came out, so I can play Japanese games in a North American unit without having to use a boot CD. But as a part of our Retrofit project, we'll be removing that mod chip and just using the mode for patching on the fly. So let's turn on this Dreamcast and fire it up. Alright, I'm going to turn off the speakers here and see if we can get an accurate reading here from our decibel meter. Okay, so I have the meter about an inch away from the fan, and I'm trying not to get it directly in the path of the airflow. I'm getting kind of an accurate measurement here. So it's right around 62 decibels or so, 61 decibels. Now obviously this is less noisy if you're farther away from it, but just for the sake of reference, about 64 decibels. Alright. To prepare your storage for the mode, all you need to do is connect it to a PC and format it as an exFAT formatted disk. In this case we have our SSD formatted as exFAT, and this is the current allocation right now with the use space and free space showing. For Dreamcast titles, you'll need to create a folder called Dreamcast and then nest all your folders underneath there. For Saturn titles, you just need to create the same folder but title it Saturn, and all your games will be located there. It's really just up to you to determine the structure. I did it by region of games here. Within the games folder itself, here's where you store all your disk folders, and these are just your BinQ files, your GDI images that are stored in these folders. And that's pretty much all there is to it. For titles that have multiple disks, let's pick a good one here. D2 has 4 disks in that. Really all you need to do is just title it as Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3, and Disk 4. And Mode would be intelligent enough to scan the folder and recognize that there are 4 disks in this title folder, and will prompt you to queue them or order them when you initially launch the game, selecting which disk you want to start from. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much as simple as it gets right there. This other file here is the database file. This houses all the game artwork and synopsis of all the games. You can download this from the Mode website, from the Terraonion website rather, and store this in the root of your storage. And it just basically reads this bin file on boot and scans through these folders and associates the title with the artwork and the synopsis. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Alright, the first order of business is to disassemble the shell. You'll first want to start by removing the broadband adapter or the modem if you have one. Alright, there we go. Underneath that there is a screw here, and we're going to want to remove the 4 screws that are holding the shell in place here. So let's do that now. Okay, we'll set these aside for later. Next, open the lid and lift up on the shell. Set the lid aside. Okay, so this is the inside of Dreamcast. You'll want to essentially just pop off the GD-ROM unit and in its place swap in the mode. But remember, we said that this Dreamcast has been fitted with a mod chip, and so what we need to do is remove that before we can install the mode. I suppose technically you don't really need to remove it. All it's doing is just providing a multi-region support and support for not so legal games, but we'll want to remove that to make sure that there's no compatibility issues. Alright, I'm going to start by removing the power supply. Yep. Next, I'm going to remove the controller ports. Let's disconnect the fan. Alright, these controller ports actually I've done a previous mod of removing the kind of the stuck in there rechargeable power battery with a modular CR2032 battery. So it's much easier to replace this once the clock battery eventually dies. You can just swap in and out another rechargeable battery. Okay, the GD Rom Assembly Removal. Just a few screws to remove. It should just pop right off. Okay, that's the old GD ROM. Okay, next we're going to take off the metal shield plate. And again, if your Dreamcast doesn't have a physical mod chip installed, you won't have to do this. You can actually just get straight to work with your mode installed right there. But since ours does, this is what we're doing now. Alright, so as you can see here, this is a VA1. These are the most common production run units in North America. The original VA0, you're probably not going to find that in North American Dreamcast. Those are mostly the initial batch for Japanese release. Main difference being that the VA1s had a 3.3 volt power going through the through to the GD-ROM. The VA0s had a full 5 volts. So something to look out for if you're installing something like a GD-EMU. But for a mode, it's compatible with both, and just nice to go with a lower power voltage board. So here is our mod chip that we installed eons and eons ago. This is a 6-wire mod chip, I believe, so-called the Dream Chip. I believe we got this from modchips.com, something like that, back in the day. So let's heat up the soldering iron and remove these wires. And get ready to install our mode. Alright, quick jump cut while we warm up the soldering iron. Alright, the iron should be nice and toasty now. Let's see if we can remove these wires. Okay. Alright, next we'll just reassemble everything. And also reinstall the controller ports. Okay. Alright, now at this point we can take out our mode, and normally you'd have these little elevated sticky feet that you would stick on the metal plate. And as you're installing your mode, this is the GD-ROM connector here, this interface, and that goes right here where the GD-ROM assembly used to go. And you simply put the sticky feet through the holes, drop the mode into the GD-ROM interface, and install your hard drive, and there you go. Very simple plug-and-play operation. In our case, we're going to be using a mounting bracket that's a part of the 3D printed SD card reader, and so we're going to go ahead and install that now. Alright, so on our SD card assembly, I've just unscrewed the SD card reader portion from the mounting bracket. And what we're going to do, this mounting bracket has pilot holes that fit the location of where the GD-ROM assembly used to go. And you just literally drop it right in to the grooves on the mounting plate, or rather the shield plate. I'm going to use the screws from our GD-ROM assembly. Just screw it down. Okay. So it should look like that, right? Alright, next up, we're going to take our mode and we're going to install our hard drive. So here is our 2 terabyte SSD. I'm going to just fit the SATA connector into the drive like that. And we're going to, you can actually secure the drive using these mounting holes. But usually when it's in the 3D printed housing assembly, it's pretty solid in there. So we're just going to insert the mode, make sure that the mode GD-ROM connector is inserted into the GD-ROM interface. Just like that. And we're going to sandwich it in there using the top of the SD card housing. This is the extension to the micro SD to full-size SD adapter. We're just going to drape that cable around very gently and install it into the micro SD reader on the mode. Just like that. We're going to fit the mounting arms over the holes in the mode, and you can see there the hard drive is pretty well sandwiched in there. It's not going to move around at all. And we're going to take our screws and start securing the top to the bottom. There we go. Hard drive is very secure in there. As you can see, there's not much room for it to wiggle around. And so when you're all done, it looks just like that. Now all you have to do is just put the power supply back in, connect everything else, and start firing up and playing some Dreamcast games. But let's also look at upgrading our fan here. Let's take a look at that next. Alright, to install our Noctua fan, we're simply going to remove the old fan, install the new one. This is the fan. From Laser Industries, they also create a 3D printed fan shroud that serves kind of the airflow conduit as this was, as well as a updated interface cable. Makes it a little bit easier to run the wires, a little bit thicker gauge too, which is nice. Alright, let's do this. We're going to start by unscrewing the existing fan. Okay, that comes off real easy. Next we're going to remove the screws that we used to have in our stock fan shroud and use them to secure our new 3D printed fan shroud for the Noctua. I keep mispronouncing that. Alright. Alright, next we're going to install our provided fan power cable. Do that in here before everything gets a little crowded. There's the power interface for the fan. So I'm going to stick that in like that. And now we drop in our fan. We're going to install it label facing outward, as this is an exhaust fan and not an intake fan. I'm going to drop it in diagonally such that the mounting hole here matches the mounting screw hole on the shroud housing. Just like that. And we have our supplied mounting screw. Okay. Now as for our power cable, I'm just going to kind of run it underneath the mounting here. If I can. Gonna circle it back, plug it into the main power leads for the fan, and just kind of tuck that in that little crevice. Alright, we're going to need to make a quick modification to our drive lid latch. The latch that's here that opens the CD tray is actually too high, and the fan will rub against it if you use the stock one. So with our replacement kit, we have this fabricated latch replacement that is shaped to accommodate the new fan. So let's just do a 1-for-1 swap. I'm going to remove, well, first let's remove the spring. Save that over here. Move the 2 screws. And swap in your new latch. Replace the screws. Replace the spring. There we go. And our last step here is just to reassemble everything now that we have everything plugged in, or not plugged in, but assembled internally. And I just need to replace the power supply, the protector board back in here, and protector. I'm not even sure what this is actually called, the proper name for it. It's a protector card. I'm just going to call it that. And reinsert our power supply. Alright, reinstall the lid. And finally, reattach the broadband adapter or your modem. And, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. We have now successfully installed a mode and a Noctua, I keep saying Noctua fan replacement inside of our Dreamcast. Let's test it out, fire it up, and see how it works.